Hi, Ann Cornick from Paint and Porcelain. I'm here to teach new beginners, and if you're somebody who's been painting for a while, I'd like to make sure that you're painting at least once a week. Let's talk about how you conceptualize a piece, and I thought it'd be interesting for you to see how I go from concept right up to what we're going to be working on today. I begin by going out to my garden and taking pictures of flowers now, because in the winter you don't have those to look at. And I take pictures of the full flower, partial flowers, in all forms of opening up, buds, stems, leaves. And I take pictures of flowers I love and flowers I may never paint, but at least I have like a library of those. So once I get the flowers together in the way I like them, I find a piece to paint. Now today we're going to be painting on a piece that has already been tinted. This is tinted with old ivory, and I like old ivory because it's kind of like yellow. It's kind of like the light that you put in the background. So I went online and I also went to my photos and I got pictures of the pansies. And then I took a piece of paper that was about the size of the piece that I wanted to work on, and I drew on it what I wanted. And this way you can kind of play with it. I did it in pencil initially, and I could erase and redo. And like this piece up here, I don't think I'm going to include in the actual piece. And then I also use colored pencils to sort of tell me what colors to use, but also where the depths are and that sort of thing. The next step is to use tracing paper and to trace it onto my piece. And then the tracing paper I use is a red tracing paper. And this is the way it comes out on the piece. So you can see exactly what you did. Now you'll notice I didn't put the veins in. I didn't put all the little tickies in because the more you put on it, sometimes it mixes into your paint and it's hard to see what it is that you're working on. You know, you can't tell whether it's the paint or it's actually the tracing paper. And the tracing paper that I use, if you're wondering, is a wax-free Surreal transfer paper. This is what it looks like. And you can get it from Dick Blick. It's an online art supply store. And I'm going to look at my piece. Now this will all fire off. So the red that I have on here, that will all fire off. And I'm going to start with the leaves. This is what the leaves look like. You can see they're kind of a scoop shaped, a little bit ruffled on the ends, but they're kind of a scoop shape. So it's important that you know what your leaves look like. And I'm going to start with the leaves because they're in the background, and then I'm going to paint my flowers over it so that way I don't damage my flower when I go to paint my leaves. The leaves that I showed you, they were kind of a bluey green. They have a little bit of blue to them. Can you see that there? Yeah. So I'm going to actually use shading green because I have it. And I'm also going to use kind of a moss green with a shading green in order to get my leaves started. And I'm trying not to, here we go. I'm going to paint to the center and put in my little vein and then paint around the edges. And I like the shading green because it gives you a real pretty color. It gives you a real pretty edge. Now the edges of these are kind of, I don't know how to describe it. They're kind of scalloped, I guess is the best way to describe it. And so I'm going to keep turning my piece as I paint the edges to give them that scalloped appearance. I know it looks open, but that's because in the future that I will have the ability to put more highlights in there because I left it unpainted at the time. Now you don't want to totally unpaint it, but you do want to try to, as much as possible, make it look like you know where the light source is coming from. So my light source is coming from the top on this. That's how I'm figuring it out. So this is what I've done so far, the two leaves. This leaf, I think I'm going to smooth that down a little. There we go. Okay. The only other leaf I have in this section is this leaf right here. And so I'm going to start, and I think this one I'm not going to use as much of the shading green on. I'm going to use more of a black green because it's behind the leaf on top. And the black green will give it a, or darkest green, they're kind of very similar. We'll give it a kind of a shadowy look, as you can see. And then again, I'm just going around the edges with kind of a little C stroke, pulling it towards me as I do it. And then I'm going to just, can you see this? I'm just going to, there, smooth it out. So again, it looks like I forgot the middle. I did not forget the middle, but I want to make sure that I have enough light there now, because you can't put the light back in later. So let's do that one now. And that one's kind of in the background. It's going to be behind the purple one. So I'm going to take the same colors I used before, with a little brown green maybe, just to give it a little variety. And I'm putting it behind the other flower that's on top there. So because it's behind a flower, I'm just sort of lightly wiping the color on. It's going to be darker on the side that it's behind the flower. And then I will turn it this way so I can paint this side of the leaf. And then I'm just gonna, I tapped my brush on the towel just to get a little paint off, and I'm just gonna pull the paint towards me a little bit just to smooth it out. There we go. And this one could use a little more of a vein in the middle. So add a little paint, maybe put a little vein in there, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, now I have my plate upside down. The plate will be going this way. So I painted in my leaves so far. I'm not going to go up and do the others. I'm just going to stay here right now because I want to do a pansy for you so you can see how I do my pansies. Now this particular pansy I want to do in purple. And I think that that would be a good way to do it as a focal point, because I think the purple really draws your eye. I really like, for a dark purple, I like either a royal purple or a royal violet. And I don't know which of the two is easier to find, but if you find them, pansy purple is another color that you could use, but I understand it's not as easy to find. But the royal purples are really beautiful. And let me just show you a pansy here so you can see. Let me put this down for a moment and I'll show you. Here's the pansy. I'm going to start out by working on this middle section here, where the darkest part of it is. And in order to do that, I side load my brush, and I'm going to pull, and I always side load my brush, like with these other leaves, I sort of full loaded it with a moss green, and then I added a little shading green on a side load, and that's what gave me the color in the dark, in the spots that are darker. The same thing here. I used a moss green, and then I used a darkest green or black green on the side load, and that helped it. So here I'm just side loading my brush. That's all I'm doing. I'm not adding any other color. Okay. And you're gonna, do royal purple. Some grain in that one. Here we go. And I'm going to pull it towards myself. They're just short, choppy little strokes towards myself. And then I want to do them up in each of these areas up here. That area and that area. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do a short, it's a side-loaded brush again, and I'm just pulling the strokes towards myself. And I'll do the same thing on the other side here. Okay, so that's the inside part of the flower. Now on the flower, the pansy that I'm going to paint, and it's actually over here. Let me show you. I'm kind of going for the look of the top pansy there, that purple, where it's a light purple around the outside. And so I'm going to use a heliotrope now. Now the heliotrope I'm choosing is kind of a yellow, a pink heliotrope. And the reason that I'm choosing that is because on the next color, I can get it closer to what I want it to be. But right now I want a little of the undercoat to have a pink hue to it and a purple hue to it in order to be able to give me something to work with on the next coat. So I'm going to take it and I'm doing the same thing I did with the, kind of with the leaves. I'm going around it. And I don't know if this is a color you can see particularly well. And here I've got a leaf. So I'm going to go right over the leaf and put the color. I'm kind of doing it the same way I did the centers, just pulling it out towards me. And I'll put the leaf underneath that. Now, because the leaf has a little spot here that I missed, right here that I missed, I'm just going to grab a little shading green and put it in there so that I remember that that's leaf and that's not flower. Now, once you go around and pull that color around, like I just did, you're pulling it towards yourself, you're going this way towards yourself. You can go back with a cleaner brush that you've used your mineral spirits or your turpentine on, and you can just do a little bit of highlights in there. I'm just coming down to myself and making little short strokes all the way around. And there we have the bottom. Now remember, if you don't get to adding a lot of shadow at this time, you can always add the dark later. It's the hard thing is to add the light. And so that's what we're trying to do this time, is just keep it really light. I'm going to do this side now, right here. Okay. So now I'm going to be doing these two upper petals, but before I do that, you can either do this with your brush that's been well cleaned, or you could use, this is what we call a Pico-Pay eraser, or you could use a wedge eraser. This is my wedge eraser. And you can take it and just clean off the top of that leaf, that petal, like that. And that'll give you a separation between the petals so you can tell where one ends and another one begins. Now the final two on here that we're going to put behind, this one has a little curl. Can you see it right there? There's like a little curl that comes down. So that we're going to make it a little darker under there. And this petal here is going to be a little darker than this one because this one is behind it. So I have to decide what color I want to do that. And if I do them all the same color, it won't be very interesting. So I think I'm going to go with the darker heliotrope and maybe a tad of banding blue. Banding blue is like a royal blue. It's a real pretty color. And it gives you a lot of depth. And I'm just painting this on most of the pansies I've seen. This is more or less just a solid color. Now, let me do this. Get a little more banding blue in there. I think my banding blue might be a little bit oily. I might have to add a little more of the powder to it, just to get it the way I want it. And then I'm going to take the same combination and I'm going to paint here. I'm going to start in the middle and paint out. And then paint across. Then I'm just going to pull it lightly up to the top. And I told you, oops, here, let's do this here. I guess I'd do it this way. I told you that we want to do, so I did my upper leaves. Now I'm going to do this section right here. Under that, I want it to be a little darker because it's under that little curl. Then I'm going to take the eraser, whichever type I prefer. Do you see how I did it under the little curl there? And I'm going to define the leaves that are in front of this back area here. So I'll put a little in there, and then I'll come in here and I'll wipe out a little. You have to keep wiping off your eraser. I'll show you what a Pico-Pay would do. It kind of, it's a little finer, so it will give you a little better fine line if you want a fine line. See how I defined that against the background? And I'm going to do the same thing over on this side to define the upper part of it. And then if you feel that you need to, and not everybody feels that they need to, but if you do, you can go in and smooth those lines. Sometimes you need to, because if you leave a line there, what inevitably will happen is that you will get a line on your piece. So when you're all done, just take your brush and gently go over. See, there's the lines. I got it all figured out there. And just gently go over and pull it down. Okay. So that's my first pansy done. Okay. All right. And now I'm going to go and do one of these buds so you can see how I've done the buds. You have to use a smaller brush for the flower and the stem, I mean the leaves and the stem, but for the flower, I think I'm going to use a little pink. I have a pretty pink here, and I'm going to use a little baby blue, and I'm just going to go in and add a little color. I think I need to use a slightly smaller brush. So now I'm down to like a 1/4 inch brush. And I think I'm going to add a little berry because I think a little berry would really perk it up. I'm hoping I'm painting so you can see. Let me hold this way. So there's the little guy up in the corner. And if you wanted to, you could have used berry even on the pansy in the middle. And then you're going to take, you have to decide what brush you want to use. I have a very thin little brush that I like to use for the little petals up here. And it kind of looks like this. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to put them in with a little bit of moss green. And a little bit of the dark green. And I want to might want to wipe out a small highlight right here. Maybe one right here. And then I'm taking my liner, so I'm going down another step. My liner is a long, narrow, and I'm going to pick the green that I want, and I'm just going to do the little guy, the little round guy here on the end. And I'm doing it with a brown green because I kind of like the brown green there. Now, the stems I could do with a liner, but I really think I'll probably use a pen. And so I will mix my paint with pen oil, and I will use my pen and just lightly draw in the stem. And that will give me a real fine stem. If I do it, I can show you if I do it right now, because I can always wipe this off. If I do it with this, because I've got the wax on there, I know it's wax free, but you still get kind of a waxy finish from the red tracing transfer paper. If you try to follow the line with the liner, it doesn't always follow the way you want it to. It will drag on that wax, that transfer paper, or it won't cover it all. And see, you can tell I'm having a little bit of trouble with it there. It just doesn't want to cover it all. So if you go back and use a pen and the pen ink and go over it, I think that'll work better. The final thing you want to do, I'm not doing background on this fire, I'm just doing my flowers, is you might want to go back and clean up, you know, some of where you're over and you don't like the look of it. You can go in and make your leaves a little more interesting by just cutting into them a little bit. You want to use your mineral spirits or your turpentine and just kind of go around the outside of those leaves and clean them up. See, I've cleaned everything up now. It looks a little better. And I can still make things a little more chunky if I want by just cutting out the sides, making them a little more irregular. So next steps, I'm going to, this pansy here will be in blue, and I'm kind of looking at this blue pansy here as a sample that I might use. And the final pansy in the background here, I'm going to do in kind of a pink. So one of these pinks I'll use, or a combination of them, pink and purple. And that will finish the piece. So this is what I'm working on. This is how I started. And this is what I have so far. So if you're working on this similar piece with me and you're working on pansies, finish your leaves, finish all your buds, finish your everything that you've drawn on here and fire it. And next time we will start with the background, and we may even do some shadow leaves as well, just to give it a little more oomph, like maybe up in this area. And we'll sign it, and then we'll determine whether or not we need a final fire. Thank you for joining me. And I encourage you to go out into your yard and take pictures of all your flowers, because come winter, you'll be glad you did, because you'll actually have something that you can use as a means of starting a new piece. So until next time, please enjoy your painting. Thanks. Hi, I hope you enjoyed the program. And I hope that you will watch future programs by liking and subscribing to my page. If you do subscribe, I would really appreciate it so that other people who have a similar interest will be able to see more of this kind of programming. I have studies available at my website along with products. If you're interested in finding out more about those, please look at the description box below. Thank you.